This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hey everybody, it's Aaron Norris with the Norris Group. We are here today with Steve Glenn. He is the founder and CEO of Plant Prefab, and their mission is to make it easy, fast, and cost-effective for people to build custom, high-quality, single and multifamily homes that are healthy, sustainable, and durable. The company operates out of a 62,000 square foot facility out here in the Inland Empire, Rialto, California. Previously, Glenn has worked with the Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative, was former CEO of PeopleLink, a founding partner of Idealab, and for Disney Imagineering and as co-director of virtual reality studios. So you have one of the most interesting resumes I think I've seen in a really long time. How did you get into the real estate space?
Well, growing up, my first love was architecture. I wanted to be an architect. I had Legos and books on Frank Lloyd Wright. I got to college and got involved in technology, but I still thought I might go into design. So one summer I did a design program, and I learned there that I really had neither the talent nor temperament to be an architect, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I learned about developers, and I realized that if you really care about the quality of the built environment, developers are much more important than architects because they set the agenda. They control land and budget. They hire architects or not, and they let them do great things or not. And so I resolved then that someday I would get into development. At that point was already involved in technology. So after a career doing tech stuff, mostly startups, but also some big company things too, I took some time off and was going to get into real estate. Finally, I was asked by a guy I worked for in college to do some nonprofit work with the Clinton Foundation. So I did that, but then I had the time and certainly the motivation to finally get into real estate. So that's kind of the background.
Well, it's a perfect blend. I look at your nonprofit space, technology. It's interesting that you make the comment about developer versus architect because there's a heavy dose of politics, especially when it comes into development in California in particular. So you've probably cut a lot of very important teeth that most people don't even realize how important it is to have.
Yeah.
Living Homes. Tell me the difference. Living Homes started back in 2004, so you really started it on the design side of things.
Yeah, and really not. I mean, we kind of really got started in 2006, but certainly was thinking about it pretty seriously back then. So when I started thinking about real estate and what I wanted to do, my thesis came pretty quickly. I concluded that there was a large and growing number of people who, like me, really valued design, health, and sustainability. So back then we were driving Priuses and shopping at Whole Foods and buying some furniture from Design Within Reach, probably more from IKEA, and reading Dwell and Wired, and using Apple products. And as I just kind of alluded to, there were buying Patagonia. There were companies back then that built products that reflected the value we placed on great form and functionality, and that were built in a healthy and sustainable way. But the production home builders, the KB Homes, Lennars, Pulte's, Centexes of the world, they weren't building homes for us. So we resolved we're going to build a company that creates products for us. And the idea was, let's get great world-class architects. Let's not screw up the great design work they do. Let's integrate a LEED Platinum level environmental program, leads a green building certification program. Platinum's their highest level of certification, and let's use factory production to more efficiently build what we need to build. So that was the idea.
Well, prefab, maybe let's touch on this here. So we talked on the last radio show, you haven't heard, but the difference between prefab, manufactured housing, modular housing, is what prefab plant does. Is it modular, or is it what do they call it? Is it stacked and sort of brought on site?
Well, sorry, are you just asking a general question, or are you
Yeah,
asking
just
about
to lay the
plant?
base before we move forward, talking a lot about prefabricated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So prefab is an industry term that covers four major building systems and markets, and before fab, before you get to site. So and I'll describe these systems, and as I describe them, I'm moving from things that mostly happen mostly happen in the factory to things that mostly happen on site. So probably what most people, or what people are most familiar with, which is mobile homes. That's a big category. They're homes that are built completely in a factory. They have to follow what's called HUD code for housing and urban development. Legally, they can't be attached permanently to a foundation. And legally, they can and are sort of discriminated against, if you will, by cities and banks to places that allow for mobile homes. The next category are modular homes. That's what we do at Plant Prefab. It's the homes we've been designing at Living Homes. So these are homes that have to conform to local building codes. So they're not HUD code. Legally, they're considered the same as a site-built home. You can't discriminate against them for purposes of zoning. And so those homes are built off-site, but they're permanently attached to a foundation. Next category, a panelized home. So that's where you're building, say, a wall section out of panels that are created in a factory. So now, remember I said I'm talking about things that happen mostly in the factory to things that mostly happen on site. So I'm now moving more into a site domain. More work is happening on site. And so with panels, you have to do much more work once you've delivered the panels, the electrical and plumbing and cladding. With modules, that often is integrated in the modules. And then the last category are pre-cut homes, like a lindel log cabin. So that's where you do pre-cut all the materials, but now you have much more work to do on site. So that's the four major systems that comprise a category of prefab.
I like that. I've never heard it sort of described in that way. So yeah, perfect. That's a great, okay. Well, I know this section, the next session, you and I will talk about a lot more of the future of housing, where we can get a lot more into LEED design and some of the cool stuff you guys are doing, even above LEED certification levels, which I thought was great. But we were going to focus this show on the accessory dwelling units and sort of some trends in that space. Has your phone sort of been blowing up about requests on ADUs?
Yeah, we get a lot. Absolutely. More and more.
And how do you think about, you've been in California for a long time, and I think one of my frustrations is that California politicians do a lot of talking about affordable housing, and it's interesting that the state is having to force the issue. In your experience as a developer, I guess you're dealing in your product is very well designed, and it's not cheap as of now. Has your experience been, I don't know, what has your experience been in California with development in general?
Well, first of all, we actually, at Living Homes, we have done some development, but Plant and Living Homes has been merged into Plant Living Homes, spun out Plant, and then Plant essentially merged with Living Homes. We are no longer developers. We aren't doing any development.
Oh,
But we did do some at Living Homes. So we're a design and construction company. That's what we do.
got it. Okay. I don't blame you.
We've mostly worked in California. I mean, no, we didn't get out of it because we had problems with development. In fact, we our last development in Atwater Village, we actually did pretty well with. But it takes time. It takes patience. There is a lot more overhead than there really would be to get stuff done. But we understood that going into it, having worked with lots of developers. So there was kind of no surprise.
Do you like the conversation around accessory dwelling units as being a solution to affordable housing?
Well, first of all, there's no solution. There are a bunch of things that need to happen, in my opinion, and people much smarter who really think about this stuff for a living, to create far more affordable housing. But is this an important part of a portfolio of activities? Absolutely. And why? In cities in particular, where the challenge of affordable housing is most acute, right? Your land costs are most expensive, your labor costs are most expensive, pain from neighborhood disruption is most problematic. You can't invent land. Now there are things you can do. You can increase density, so you can I think deal more responsibly with parking and making that a little bit easier on developers so that they can create more and denser housing in certain areas. But that's only a solution for areas that allow denser housing. Of course, AB 50 or SB 50 was just struck down, or wasn't enacted into law, I guess, last week or the week before, which would have made it easier to do more dense housing in areas. But regardless, even with that, there was still the issue of what do you do in areas that are zoned for single family homes? Well, you can do what Minneapolis did a few months ago, which is they abolished single family home zoning. It's gone. In Minneapolis, if you're on a lot with a single family home, subject to size and how big the lot is and coverage for your existing home, you can now do multifamily. Now, it may only be a duplex or triplex, but they said, hey, the only way, one of the ways that we can create more affordable housing is to allow people to do more housing and smaller housing. That, by definition, makes it more affordable. Well, if we do more housing, then that increases housing stock and theoretically should push down prices. But B, if there's smaller homes, that should also, by virtue of the fact that they're smaller homes, make them more affordable. So California, Governor Brown a couple of years ago signed a law that mandated that all municipalities must accept accessory dwelling units. And that's kind of comes from a similar space, i.e., let's make it easier for people to do smaller homes, basically use their space in their backyards. And because they're smaller, they'll be more affordable. So that's sort of the philosophical underpinning behind this.
Well, as you know, a designer and a builder, you know that, ADUs, you've got some of the most expensive rooms just packed into a really small space. So when I'm looking at a lot of the designs that are out there, it's not cheap. So it'll be interesting to see the kind of demand that we land on. We've got 3D printed housing. We've been in conversation with the developer that's going to be moving forward, and it's a very different looking product than something you guys have on your website. But really see a shortage of labor in the construction field. So I really think the solution is going to be prefab or 3D printed homes. Is that where you're sort of seeing the trend going?
Well, again, I don't think there's any single solution, but will more and more homes be built off-site? We hope so. We believe so. It certainly can be a more cost and time-effective way to do this. So I think and certainly, we've seen a significant uptick in our business. So that does seem to suggest that there is a growing market. I think 3D printed homes will find its way. I think it'll be a bit. You've got just a number of challenges there. Most people don't want to live in concrete homes. Concrete is incredibly resource intensive as a building material. It's basically a pound of carbon is released for every pound of concrete. Now there are new types of materials people are experimenting with. It's more expensive, but I'm sure that will come around. But then the other problem is it's sort of like panelization. You're saving on framing, but you still have to do a bunch of work on site, electrical, plumbing,
right?
Windows, a bunch of other things. So all those labor shortages and expenses, still apply.
What are the turnaround times? And let's just use accessory dwelling units, the smaller units, just for comparison. How long does it take to put something together in a factory at this point?
It depends on the size, but depending upon the size of the home, from 1 to 3 months. Once we started production, it can take 1 to 2 months to get materials in, and we don't start until we have all the materials. But once we do, it's very quick.
That's extremely quick. So considering StickBuilt, I'm hearing 8 months to a year, and just because I've never been through the process before, when you're dealing with something that's sort of pre-designed and going to be built in the factory, when you're working with different municipalities, do you have any experiences being able to, so much of it being done on your site? Is it easier to work with the different municipalities? How are they viewing it? And can you dual track the permitting process? What is that like?
Yeah, well, first of all, just to be clear, the home isn't done in 1 to 3 months. I would say overall, what we're seeing is 6 to 9 months from start of production to completion. And in Los Angeles, in the area, it's 12 to 18 to 24 months to get homes done. I never hear 8 months. Certainly, some of the production builders go quicker, and probably they're quicker in suburban areas too. But
okay.
But for custom home builders, it seems to be a little bit longer. So we have to go through the same planning approvals that that a site built home goes through. But once you go through, so whatever zoning setback, if you have coastal commission, if you have architecture review, all that you have to do. But then for your building permit, it's actually a bifurcated process. The state is responsible for reviewing the permits for the vertical, for the structure itself, and they actually outsource it to a third party, a group called there are 13 different agencies that do it, and they're all private companies, which is to say they're like super efficient. So we get our building, and technically we're getting a RTI ready to issue. We're getting that within like 2-3 weeks. The local municipality is responsible for your local zoning, and so uh, that takes whatever it takes. When the modules are built, and we do 90+% of the work on the vertical, so everything above the modules in the factory. So we're doing all finished plumbing and electrical, cladding, drywall, paint. Um, we're doing millwork, appliances installed, tiles grouted, and all the inspections are done at the factory, and the modules are actually sealed. And yes.
No, I was doing a
Oh, okay. And the local municipality has no right or authority to do any inspections behind the walls. So yeah, that part is a little bit more efficient.
Interesting. Okay. We're really exploring all the different ways. So the last few sessions we've been exploring the manufactured housing space, and it sounds really like a good idea because the time frame is so short. It's very cost effective. However, the lending space just does not like mixed inventory. If you have a stick-built primary and then you're throwing a manufactured unit in the back, it's causing a lot of issues on the funding side. But all the product that you're building falls within Title 24 stick-built, correct?
Oh yeah, no, you have to do Title 24.
Is any of the
legally these are considered the same as a site-built home. There's no disclosure requirements. It's the same.
Is there anything coming up in the Title 24 changes in 2020 that is affecting your design, or you guys already well above the minimum requirements?
We tend to be above it.
Yeah, we'll definitely go in a lot more into that next time. You guys are doing some really, really interesting stuff. And actually, our guest from last week did a tour of your facility a couple of weeks ago, and he was really impressed. It was pretty neat.
Oh, cool. Who was that?
John Aronson. He specializes in manufactured housing. He's based in San Diego. And why we wanted to interview him is that he meets with clients, and he actually wanted to meet your team to be able to offer this as a solution as well, because depending on the site and the client and meeting their objectives, he's able to say, you need to do stick-built, a manufactured home, or now, looking at the prefab space, it's just cool to be able to offer everything that's out there. So a lot of our clientele is real estate investors. So if they've got existing rentals at the moment, looking at all the viable options out there as skilled labor becomes an issue, speed is important, financing for these kind of projects. So it's just a really interesting opportunity. From the design side, I guess I have a little bit of a design background. I just think of what all these owner occupants are going to do, and if they're going to mess up the feng shui of their home. It's going to be interesting to watch how this unfolds. So we're
cool.
Following SB 13 very closely to see how this progresses. But how do you see Plant Prefab really getting more into the ADU space and offering a few models that people can buy that are already existing, and it doesn't have to go through a custom timeline process?
Yeah, well, we do already. I mean,
Okay.
we have our own unit that we designed called the AB1 81. We have a model from Yves Bahar, just one of the top industrial designers in the world, called the YB1. They're both at our website, plantprefab.com, and you can under homes, under standard homes, and you can actually configure them like cars, with finishes and fixtures that you select. And the Yves Bahar living home, we actually have at our factory for tour. We have tours every Wednesday, I think at 10, and once a month on Saturdays, and those can be scheduled online.
I'm going to have to definitely come over because I love this stuff. So that's all the time we have for our first show, and I'm actually very excited to speak with you about the future of housing. So thank you for your time, and if you want more information
Absolutely.
on plantprefab.com, and we'll be back next week. The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.